This was supposed to be Formula One's greatest evolution. Instead, it became a disaster in just 3 races. Drivers are furious. Fans are leaving. And the FIA is now scrambling to fix something they spent years building. Because here's the part nobody expected. Cars are randomly losing half their power in the middle of a straight. No warning. No control. Just instant speed drops, while another car is flying right behind. This isn't just bad racing. It's dangerous. And one driver predicted it would happen before the season even started. But that's not even the biggest problem. The cars are unstable. Overtaking feels artificial. And the sport has already lost nearly half its audience in some regions after just a few races. Something is clearly broken. And now, behind closed doors, even the FIA is admitting it. But what they're trying to change next could make this situation even worse. Stay with me. Everyone thought this would be the most advanced era in Formula One history. Smarter cars, cleaner energy, closer racing. That was the promise. But within the first few races, drivers started saying something very different. Not in public at first. In briefings. In radio messages. In conversations that were never meant to be heard. They weren't excited. They were confused. And then, frustrated. Because the cars didn't feel faster. They didn't feel sharper. They felt restricted. And sometimes, completely unpredictable. This is where things start to get serious. Because one of the core ideas behind these regulations was balance. Half electric, half combustion. It sounds perfect. But on track, it created a hidden problem that only appears at full speed. The battery doesn't behave like a traditional engine. It doesn't fade slowly. It doesn't warn you. It just stops delivering power. And when it does, the car instantly loses a massive portion of its performance. Right in the middle of racing conditions. Now imagine this. One driver exits a corner with full deployment. Everything working perfectly. Maximum acceleration. But just a few seconds later, the system switches. The battery drains. The power disappears. And suddenly, that same car becomes a target. Because the driver behind might still have everything available. Full power. Full speed. Full momentum. And that difference is not small. It's extreme. This is not racing margins. This is a closing speed that shouldn't exist in Formula One. And here's the detail most people missed. This doesn't happen at predictable moments. It's not the same lap. Not the same corner. Not the same straight. Every team manages energy differently. Every car reacts differently. So on any given straight, you could have 3 completely different speeds. One attacking. One defending. One suddenly slowing down. All at the same time. And that's where the danger multiplies. Because Formula One has always been built on precision. Drivers trust what the car will do. They trust what the car ahead will do. But now, that trust is starting to disappear. And once that happens, everything changes. But this is only one layer of the problem. Because what's happening in the corners might be even worse. But what's happening in the corners might be even worse. Because this is where drivers are supposed to feel in control. This is where confidence matters most. And right now, that confidence is gone. The new system was designed to replace one of the most controversial tools in Formula One. The old overtaking system. It was simple. Press a button. Reduce drag. Gain speed. Artificial, but predictable. So the FIA removed it. And replaced it with something far more complex. Active aerodynamics. A system that constantly adjusts the car's wings depending on the situation. In theory, this should have made racing more natural. More fluid. More real. But in reality, it introduced a completely new problem. Because the system doesn't just react to the track. It reacts to the air. And the air in Formula One is never clean. The moment a car follows another, everything changes. Turbulence. Dirty air. Unstable flow. That part was always there. But now, the car is trying to correct it in real time. Over and over again. Tiny adjustments. Non-stop. And to the driver, it feels like the car is constantly shifting underneath them. Not enough to lose control completely, but enough to destroy confidence. And here's where it becomes critical. Because at high speed, even the smallest instability matters. A slight movement in the front wing. A small change in downforce. That's all it takes. Fernando Alonso didn't try to sugarcoat it. He said the car feels unpredictable. He said it jumps in corners. And at one point, he even questioned whether it was worth continuing like this. Think about that. A driver with decades of experience, questioning the fundamentals of the car. But there's an even deeper layer here. One that most fans haven't noticed yet. Because this instability doesn't just affect handling. It affects decision-making. Drivers hesitate. They brake earlier. They avoid pushing at the limit. And when that happens, racing changes completely. Overtakes disappear. Battles fade. Everything becomes more cautious, more calculated. And that's the opposite of what Formula One is supposed to be. But here's the twist. This instability doesn't affect every team the same way. Some cars handle it better. Some drivers adapt faster. Which creates something the regulations were supposed to eliminate. Inequality. And not small gaps. Massive ones. Gaps that are actually bigger than before these rules were introduced. So now, instead of closer racing, we have unpredictable cars, frustrated drivers, and a grid that's spreading apart again. But even that is not the breaking point. Because what's coming next is where everything connects. But even that is not the breaking point. Because what's coming next is where everything connects. This is the part that turned frustration into anger. And it doesn't come from the cars. It comes from the results. Because no matter how chaotic things look on track, one thing is becoming very clear. The grid is not closer. It's more divided than before. And that completely destroys the purpose of these rules. The entire idea behind 2026 was to reset Formula One. New engine philosophy. New aerodynamic approach. New opportunity for every team. A fresh start. But after just a few races, a new hierarchy has already formed. And it's not subtle. Some teams found performance immediately. Others are completely lost. Seconds behind. Not tenths. Seconds. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because this gap is not coming from better driving. It's coming from who understood the system first. Who mastered energy deployment. Who optimized the electrical side of the car. And in a regulation where half the power comes from that system, that advantage becomes massive. Almost untouchable. So instead of rewarding pure racing, the sport is now rewarding who solved the equation first. And that creates a dangerous situation. Because if you're one of the teams behind, you're not just slower. You're stuck. Development is limited. Budgets are capped. And the complexity of the system makes catching up incredibly difficult. Which means this gap might not close anytime soon. And drivers can feel it. They know when they have a car capable of fighting. And they know when they don't. That's why the reactions are getting stronger. Because this is no longer about adapting. It's about being trapped in a system that doesn't give you a fair chance. But here's where it goes even deeper. Because this imbalance doesn't just affect competition. It affects the entire experience of watching Formula One. If the same teams dominate, interest drops. If overtakes disappear, excitement fades. If races feel predictable, people stop watching. And that's exactly what's starting to happen. Not in theory. In reality. Numbers are falling. Fast. In some markets, nearly half the audience disappeared in just a few races. Think about how serious that is. Years of growth. Global expansion. New fans entering the sport. And suddenly, a sharp decline. Because something doesn't feel right anymore. And when fans feel that, they don't wait. They leave. But here's the part that changes everything. Because when fans leave, the pressure doesn't stay on the teams. It goes straight to the top. To the people who built this system. To the FIA. To the ones who approved every detail. And now, they're being forced to respond. Not slowly. Not carefully. Urgently. Meetings are happening. Discussions are accelerating. Changes are already being considered, just weeks into the season. And that tells you one thing. This is bigger than a bad start. This is a system that might not work as intended. But here's the real tension. Because fixing it is not simple. Every change creates winners. And losers. Some teams will fight to keep things exactly as they are. Others will demand immediate action. And right in the middle of all that are the drivers. The only ones who actually feel everything in real time. The only ones who deal with the consequences, corner after corner. And they've reached a point where staying quiet is no longer an option. Because what they're about to push for next could force the FIA into a decision they never wanted to make. Because what the drivers are about to push for next could force the FIA into a decision they never wanted to make. Admit they got it wrong. Not partially. Not quietly. Completely. And that's where the tension inside the paddock reaches another level. Because drivers are no longer just complaining. They're aligning. Sharing the same concerns. Repeating the same warnings. And when that starts to happen in Formula One, it's never a small issue. It becomes pressure. Real pressure. Behind the scenes, meetings are already being planned with the Drivers' Association. Not for feedback. For solutions. Because the drivers don't just want explanations anymore. They want changes. Immediate ones. And some of the proposals being discussed reveal just how serious the situation really is. Reducing electric power, limiting how aggressively energy can be deployed, changing how quickly the battery can recharge, even adding visual warning systems so drivers can see when a car ahead is about to suddenly slow down. That alone tells you everything. Because Formula One has never needed that before. Drivers have always relied on instinct, on predictability, on trust. Now, they might need warning signals just to avoid collisions. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Because every single one of these changes directly affects performance. If you reduce electric power, lap times change. If you adjust energy recovery, strategies change. If you limit deployment, overtaking changes. This isn't a small fix. This is rewriting the behavior of the cars in the middle of a season. And that creates a problem the FIA cannot escape. Timing. Because acting too slowly makes the sport worse. But acting too fast creates chaos. Teams won't agree. Some will lose their advantage overnight. Others will gain one. And in Formula One, that's never accepted quietly. Especially when millions are at stake. But here's the deeper issue. One that goes beyond performance. Beyond safety. Beyond competition. Credibility. Because the moment you start changing fundamental rules just weeks after introducing them, you send a message. That the system wasn't ready. That the testing wasn't enough. That the risks were underestimated. And that's exactly what this situation is starting to expose. A regulation built on ambition, but rushed into reality. And the drivers know it. They feel it every lap, every corner, every time the car behaves in a way it shouldn't. That's why the tone is changing. From frustration to disbelief. Because this isn't just about adapting to something new. It's about questioning whether this should have been introduced at all. But here's the twist that makes everything even more intense. Some of the most important elements of this regulation cannot be changed. The 50% electric concept. Blocked. The removal of previous systems. Blocked. The core philosophy of this era? Untouchable. So the FIA is trapped. They have to fix the consequences without changing the cause. And that's almost impossible. Which means whatever solution they choose will be incomplete. A compromise. And in Formula One, compromises rarely satisfy anyone. Not the teams. Not the drivers. And definitely not the fans. So now, everything is building toward one moment. One decision. One set of changes that will define whether this era can be saved. Or whether it will be remembered as one of the biggest miscalculations in modern Formula One. And the closer we get to that decision, the clearer one thing becomes. This was never just a technical problem. It was a gamble. A massive one. And now, everyone is waiting to see if it's about to fail completely.